On this episode, we talk about utilizing natural light, the second in a series of 7 episodes all about improving your photography. It's Monday, July 3rd, and this is the iPhoneography podcast. I'm Greg McMillan, joined by my good buddy Dave Podner. Hello, David.
Hey, Greg, how you doing?
I'm beat. I am just, as they would say in the UK, I'm right knackered. It's been a very, very busy time for me. And I held off telling you this until we were recording because I want to get your reaction.
Okay.
So remember the picture that used to be behind me of a house?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was so we had this big family reunion. And when I say big, I mean I showed you the picture of our family. Not everybody that was there was in this picture I took, and it had 156 people in it. So it's a big family. So what we did was my cousin that hosted is an auctioneer. Okay. And they auctioned off some stuff. People donated some stuff to help pay for the event. Okay. And then anything over and above went to, it's going to go to help rebuild the Legion that burnt down in their town out there, not too far from here. So it was good. It's going to go to a good cause. So I donated this big picture. It's a big picture of the house that my parents live in, and it's the house that my grandparents lived in for years and raised that family. And this family reunion was to honor my grandparents and their children, who is like my parents and aunts and uncles. Mm-hmm. And they're all getting up there. So, and my grandparents are long gone. So this picture, I took it in the fall with my phone and blew it up and put it in this frame. And then actually my dad made a frame out of barn board, which really suited the picture better. And so I donated it to the auction. And I have never sold a photo. Not that I sold it, but I mean, I've never had a photo go for so much money as this one.
Oh, wow.
$1,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One of my cousin's kids. So this guy is my second cousin. He just got married last weekend. He wanted it, and he wanted it bad. So he bid $1,000 on it right off the hop, and nobody touched it. So he got it.
It wasn't even a buildup.
No.
Wow.
He wanted it so bad, and so now he's got it. And so, I mean, I guess I could say I've sold a print for $1,000.
Yeah. Wow.
Normally I probably would have got maybe $150 for it.
Still,
who knows? But
that would be wow. But yeah, $1,000. Wow.
$1,000 for a picture. Oh, I'm doing the wrong line of work when I go to work.
Ooh.
But anyway, that's
I think we both are.
Yeah. So that was my that was a highlight for me, I think.
The last that would definitely be a highlight.
Couple of weeks or so. So but I've been so busy that now, okay, so as everybody knows, if they're following the podcast, we're in not week 2, but episode 2 of a 7-episode series of improving your photography. And this is stuff that can be related to any type of camera, not just an iPhone. And the first week, or the first episode, we talked about mastering composition, and this time we're talking about utilizing natural light. And now where was I going with this?
Well, just that we're in week 2 and we're on to natural light.
Yeah, but I had a thought before I started yammering on about that.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So that's what. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Normally, we wanted to take pictures recently, and because we're not doing our recent photos, but we were going to try to kind of do like a homework assignment for this this subject. But I've been so busy, I had to pull them out of my archives. So I just wanted to disclaim that.
Oh, no. And there's one or two that I did that I had to pull from my archive that were, I think we had to pull, let me see here. I'm going to kind of go over. I only had to pull one. I only had to pull the first one, the golden hour one. Everything else, I was kind of lucky that I kept in mind what we were actually, the outline for our week that we're doing. I kept as a note on my phone.
Oh, yeah.
And times when I would just go for a walk, I would just do a scroll through the note and say, okay, here are the 7 or 8 different topics that we may want to be thinking about. So keep an eye out if you can see something, a photo opportunity that would match this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to try my darndest to do that for the next one. And you said it is understanding exposure, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think I could try things with that, for the next one. But anyway, so utilizing natural light.
And before we get started, Greg, get started, as you mentioned, we are recording on July 3rd. So people in the US are getting started setting off fireworks. So there may be the occasional boom and bark that you hear, with my neighbors setting off their own fireworks and the dogs barking at the fireworks.
Okay.
Our dog Charlie is not scared of fireworks or lightning. He just barks at them.
Oh, yeah.
So he's not cowering.
Right.
He's not, I had a dog growing up who was exceptionally afraid of fireworks.
Our dog is, yeah.
Yeah, we had to give him an Ativan before fireworks or thunderstorms. Yeah, he was, when we got him when he was an older dog, he was abused by whoever had him before us. So, but Charlie, he's not afraid. He's not cowering. He's coming to the top of the steps and barking at the front door.
Yeah.
Like someone's at the front door. So he's being brave and he's barking at the noise.
Yeah.
But if that happens to, Greg does a great job with editing, but in case something does happen to kind of filter through, and every so often if you hear boom, bah, 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 you know what it is.
Well, Leo's had his time, so maybe Charlie can have some time.
That is true. That is true. That is true.
So yeah, no, it's all good. If it happens, it happens. It's not a big deal. So now, just to recap on this, this whole process, I got this outline from ChatGPT, and it was the outline for improving your photography, and then all the different subjects. And then I took each subject and got an outline for it too. So that's basically where all this stuff comes from. It's not that Dave and I can't think for ourselves. I think we're pretty good at that, but I was just playing around with this one time, and I thought, hey, this is a great idea for a series. So that's where it all come from. In case you missed the last episode. So utilizing natural light, it says effectively in iPhone photography can significantly enhance the quality and mood of your photos. And then here are some tips to help you make the most of natural light. So now this is where we're going to start. And we're going to start with number 1, and it's golden hour and blue hour. So I'll just read off the cuff here what it says. Take advantage of the magical lighting conditions during the golden hour, which is shortly after sunrise or shortly before sunset, and blue hour, which is shortly before sunrise and after sunset. During these times, the light is softer, warmer, and creates a beautiful glow. Plan your outdoor shots accordingly and capture stunning images with warm tones and long shadows. So that's what the ChatGPT outline gave us. So now if you look on your podcast player, or if you don't have access to, however you're listening, if it doesn't show the images, you can go to the website. The images will be there and you can follow along that way. The first one we're going to look at is with regards to golden hour, is one that Dave provided. And so, kind of give us your thoughts on, how this applies to golden hour.
Sure. So this was taken early in the morning. This is what, like I said, this is one of the older photos I had. So this is around 4 years old. This was taken in April around 6:30 in the morning. So you figure this is right after sunrise.
Yeah.
And it helped that it was mostly overcast, but it wasn't a solid bank of clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, just trying to orientate myself here. I believe I'm facing east in this case, and the reddish of the sun just coming up creates this blanket on in the sky.
Yeah.
So it just gives you that extra golden light, and you'll get this with or without clouds. But if it's cloudy, the clouds almost act as an additional reflector, and you just get that. And it especially helps that the road I'm on is a red brick road, so that adds to the warmthness of the image.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
So you just have this kind of glow about you. And like I said in the thing, it's something definitely keep in mind right after sunrise and right before sunset.
Yeah, for the golden hour. Yeah.
For the golden hour. I really haven't I tried to find ones that I had blue hour, and I just couldn't find a good blue hour that I've taken. And it is a different feel. So it's again, these are both. Now I know there's different apps you can do to find gold hour and blue hour. Or if you have the Apple Watch, there's watch faces with sunrise and sunset that you can actually see when it's happening. You can even set an alarm then. I tried doing that. There was, it's going to be sunset at this time. I'll try to set an alarm 5 minutes before, 10 minutes, 15 minutes before, and the alarm would be check to see if a good photo is happening.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, especially let's say in the summer, sunrise happens so early or sunset happens late enough, it's a little harder to catch than the equinoxes, where they're a little closer to, especially the sunrise part. Unless you have a job like Greg, where sometimes you work until early morning and you catch the sunrise coming home.
Yes, I've done that. Yeah. So the idea of golden hour is to give, to produce an image with a nice warm feeling to it, warm as in color temperature. So I have one for golden hour as well. And this one here was, I forget when it was taken. Yes, I do. No, I don't. I remember it was July of 2021, and it was about 20 after 8 in the evening. So there's still probably an hour or so, actually probably about an hour and a half of daylight left. But at this particular spot, the sun was coming through some trees and hitting this dam at just the right. I was there at just the right time of day, and the right place, right time, and it warm, like the nice warm glow of the sunlight hit the cement, and it. I don't think I did much with this as far as editing goes, other than maybe a little bit of saturation, but it was pretty warm. Like the light was pretty warm when it hit that cement and that little bit of water, and so it gives it a nice moody feeling, a moody look to it. Had this been in the middle of the day, it would be a completely different image. Like there's some dark areas in it where a lot of shadow areas and stuff. And now if you hear a loud snap, that's me killing this fly around here. But anyway, there's just a nice feeling of warmth to this. And so, Dave's example, early morning, just after the sun was up. And with this example of late in the evening, just before the sun was going down, it golden hour gives it a nice mood to the image. And, and with blue hour, I couldn't find one with blue hour either. And admittedly, I like with all the stuff I've been doing the last week or two, I didn't have a whole lot of time to hunt one down or take one for that matter. But with blue hour, basically the sun's already gone down, and the sky could look dark, but when a camera picks up the sky in an exposure, it'll actually look blue. And that's why they call it blue hour. And it just gives it a whole different mood, a different feeling to the image. So like with Dave, with your picture, blue hour might not work so great with clouds like that.
Right.
But it probably would a little bit. But if it was clear, it would definitely be better.
Well, one thing I noticed on your photo, if you zoom into the lit up concrete pier pillar, not overly, but just kind of halfway zoomed in, because of the way the shadows are hitting, it almost looks like a face. The way it almost looks like someone with like a beard and the eyes, and like you said about the shadows. If it's midday, you're not getting the same shadows hitting it the same way.
Right, yeah.
Especially a worn piece of concrete where it's not smooth. So you're going to have the shadows and the dips, and midday is just so harsh. And so it hits it so hard. Where later in the day, you do get that softer and being diffused through the tree. You can see you can have a little bit of a different feel to it.
Yeah, yeah. And golden hour, sure, I guess one of my favorite times to shoot. Because that's the sun setting or rising. And like Dave said, I if I work a night shift and I get out of work at just the right time, I can catch a good sunrise. But on my days off, I don't get up for one. It's just not what I do. But you can get some really cool, and pardon the pun here, but cool warm images at golden hour. I don't know. Golden hour can produce some great things. Like if you're in a big city and you can see the sun reflecting off glass buildings, those types of images are fantastic. I've seen tons of them on Instagram, places like that. So golden hour, there's plenty of opportunity to produce a nice warm, pleasing image.
Most definitely.
So next we got diffuse light. Dave, you want to read the outline for that?
It says, look for diffuse light on cloudy or overcast days. Clouds act as a natural diffuser, creating soft and even lighting that is flattering for various subjects. These conditions are especially suitable for portrait photography as they eliminate harsh shadows and provide a more balanced exposure.
Yep. So you have a lily that you've taken in diffused light. So, explain what the advantage of diffused light is.
Sure. So in this case, I was getting pretty close. So if you would have a clear day with harsh lighting, you're creating a shadow and that you have to deal with, especially when you're in close to like flowers where you have like I may be between me and the sun and there'd be a harsh shadow that I would somehow have to deal with it by either maybe zooming in or going to a weird angle, or just it sometimes just blows out some of the details because trying to deal with either A, exposure, or B, creating a harsh shadow with the harsh jagged lines that, sometimes you want that, but for a delicate thing like a flower, you don't necessarily want harsh lines on there. Now, this is me taking advantage of the recent fires that happened in northern Canada. So this wasn't an overcast day. This was a hazy day due to the smoke.
Smoky day.
Yeah. So it's a little different diffusion because instead of dealing with water droplets, you're dealing with particulate matter. And you're dealing with not just the high clouds, but that particulate matter was everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember this was me walking from my desk down to get a cup of coffee at my work. And you could smell the smoke in the air. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, and just having that makes it a little bit easier to get these details, or like it mentions, if you're trying to get a portrait, because it's so hard. So, like I said, some people do want that harsh look with somebody. But for the most part, when you're doing a portrait, you don't want a harsh light because the harsh lines on someone's face, it looks good if you're like you had that photo, that black and white photo from last year, I think, of the person up close. That was great as a harsh line. It was with the white background.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that was a great harsh look because you were going for someone a weathered look to someone.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also a negative where if you're trying to do an outdoor shot of someone, it brings up all the creases and cracks and criggles and their eyes are very hard to see because of the lighting. So you want to try to diffuse the light if it's overcast or if, let's say if you don't have an overcast day, you look for something to diffuse the light for you.
Yeah.
To make it easier and make the subject it makes the subject look better, especially when you're dealing with portrait photography.
Yeah, and it gives it an element of softness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so and what you know we're going to talk about harsh midday sun, but you can't escape talking about it when you talk about diffused light because you think of diffused light and you think of all the problems that you're solving with it, and the problems are the problems that you have with that harsh light.
Mm-hmm.
But with this particular image of this flower, the flower stands out against the background, and this fly is going to drive me nuts. But the flower stands out against the background, and there's no worry of any shadow interfering with it. So it's got a nice even lighting to very easy to expose because
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to worry about whether you're trying to expose for the highlights or the shadows or whatever. Everything's nice and even. My image for diffuse light is a flower that I did with a macro lens. This is with a Moment macro lens from a few years ago. And it was just an overcast day. And I just didn't have to worry about, how to approach the flower. I didn't have to worry about my shadow going, over it and getting in the way or anything. So, it works out great for macro work. You don't have to worry about where you position yourself. You could take almost any kind of picture from any angle in diffuse light like that. I always used to think cloudy days were the best time for landscape photography. But I've learned since that, sometimes golden hour is best or blue hour even, just depending on what you're shooting in the landscape. But I've come to appreciate light a lot more over the years. But, a few years ago, I was doing most of my landscape shots on an overcast day with this nice, even diffused light, and there will still be shadow areas with diffused light because if you're in the forest or whatever, there's bound to be some shadow areas, but it's nice and it's a very gradual transition from the bright areas to the dark areas when it comes to the shadows. And I mean, you can see that with even with Dave's picture in the long grass in the background. There is some sunlight by the looks of it coming through the smoke that was in the air, but it's not that bad. It's very gentle. And with the image that I have with this yellow flower, it's it's just it just makes everything look so soft and pleasing to the eye. So that's that's basically our thoughts on diffused light. So next we have backlighting. So experiment with backlighting where the primary source of light comes from where the primary source of light comes from behind your subject. This can create a beautiful halo effect, rim lighting, or silhouettes. Use the iPhone's exposure control, tap and hold the screen to lock the focus and exposure, and then slide your finger up or down to adjust accordingly to ensure your subject is properly exposed. So I really like doing backlit stuff. And this one here, it's a black and white, Dave, that you did. And now, was this with portrait mode?
I'm trying to remember. I know it was not.
You just separated the background, did you? Or how did you do this?
Well, what
this is
happened
interesting.
is, yeah, what I did was, this was taken directly into the sun. So, yeah, basically, it was a branch of a bush that I have outside our house. The
Mm-hmm.
sun is actually directly behind one of the leaves.
Oh, okay.
And the only thing really in the background is sky.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's
Yeah.
not a lot of background. So when I
Right.
did the edits, and I actually did the edits in the photo app, because this is a
Mm-hmm.
live photo still.
Okay.
So this was, I didn't use Lightroom or Photomator. This was, and originally I wanted to go for a silhouette here. But as I was adjusting it, the detail of the veins in the actual leaves themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and the you could see because they're thin enough leaves that you could see through them if you have a bright enough light. The
Yeah. Yeah.
texture, the additional texture,
Mm-hmm.
I just like the way it turned out that way. So it was, I was looking for a silhouette or a backlit thing to do. And after taking the photo and just working it around a little bit, it turned out like, wow, that the way, just the extra texture by allowing it to come through.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
leaves
That's
being a little
cool.
translucent just added a nice little texture addition to what else addition in addition to just having the contrast between the black and the white background.
Mm-hmm. So, how did you get the skies, like the background, to be so white?
I'm trying to remember exactly how I worked on it. Just because when I started the editing process, I kept the original photo.
Yeah.
So basically, the background was just a light blue. By just converting it into, I think the main edit I did was just converting it to black and white.
Okay.
That was enough, and working on the contrast,
Oh yeah. Okay.
the
Oh yeah. Oh, all
contrast,
right.
the
Yeah, I can
shadow
see that.
lights, and then
And
using one of the black and white filters that's
yeah,
built into the Photos app.
yeah. And I think it's important to know kind of what you did, um,
Mm-hmm.
because when you first look at this, you might not think it's backlit. Because you can see the veins and the leaves and everything else. You can see all the detail,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing that it is backlit, and actually that one leaf just left of center, you could pretty much see where the sun flare
Yeah.
is. It's coming off that leaf there. Uh, I think I think it's important to know the editing process because now that we know it's backlit, we know what the effect you can get
Mm-hmm.
by shooting into the sun with leaves in the foreground. Is you could see like the sun's strong enough to go right through those leaves and show you that detail. And when we look at mine, you'll see basically the same idea, but not to this extent. But you can see the detail. You could tell that the sun is coming. When you first look at it, no, you don't know it's backlit. But when you know it's backlit, you can say, okay, yes, that sun is coming through the leaves to give you that effect. And I think that's a very cool idea that you had there, especially with the edit, because it could throw people for a loop.
Mm-hmm.
And it threw me for a loop because when you labeled this as backlighting, I thought, okay, how is that? How is this backlit? And then but it makes sense now that you explain it,
Yeah.
which I think is cool. When you look at my image, it's a leaf and it's lit from the other side, but it's not directly. I wasn't pointing the camera directly at the sun. So, I mean, you could see the face of the leaf that's facing the camera, but the backlighting provides shadows for the backside of the leaf from other
Mm-hmm.
parts of the tree. And so you could really, there's a lot of different cool things you can do with that by projecting the shadow on the leaves. And, it's you could have a lot of fun playing with that, different angles, different types of leaves, all that stuff. But when you talk about backlighting, you can think about like a hair light, in portraiture. If you have, if you want to light a person, take a picture of a person with the light, say the sun behind them. You can always use a flash, whether it's an on-camera flash or an off-camera flash, but you could use a flash to light up their face to compensate for that heavy shadow area you're going to experience when the sun's behind them. There's a lot of different things you can play around with backlighting, and and when you really stop to think about it, exposure is a pretty important part of the process. When you're shooting backlit like that, I remember doing some macros of flowers, and I had the phone upside down right on the ground because they were so small, these little daisies, and and I shot them backlit on purpose. So it took a lot of processing and everything else to make them look, the way I wanted, where you can actually see what the flowers are. So backlit has a lot of different elements to it. You got your exposure, and then your processing and subject matter and all that stuff. So it's an interesting concept to play around with. Next is midday sun, or actually the thing says avoid harsh midday sun. So Dave, you want to read that one?
Yeah, sure. The midday sun can create strong shadows and harsh highlights, resulting in unflattering images. As shooting outdoors during this time, look for shaded areas or use natural objects like trees or buildings to create softer lights on your subject. And we talked a little bit about this with the diffuse light, because this is kind of the opposite.
Yeah, but exactly.
With your photo, though, you're showing how the harsh light can actually be used to your advantage to show patterns.
Yeah. Like it says to avoid harsh midday sun. And when I was going through some of my images looking for something that would be, the wrong type of image to take, I honestly couldn't really find too many. And, I'm not saying I'm a great photographer in that respect. I'm just saying that, and I think it's the iPhone too. I think the iPhone has a lot to do with this, as it captures such a wide dynamic range that, you can get, it could be too bright in the sunlight areas and too dark in the shadow areas. But for this particular image I shot, when I took the picture, I dialed the exposure down so that the bright stuff would look, half decent, and then just let the shadow stuff, let the shadows go where they go. And it actually didn't turn out too bad, but I've shot this particular day, I bet you I took about 20 or 30 pictures, none of which I would really think are usable, just because of all the harsh shadows and the bright light. And I think with this one here, I think I maybe got a little lucky, because the roots at the bottom of the tree are in the sunlight, and then the rest of it, everything's, kind of with dappled light or whatever. But, but with harsh sunlight, so taking pictures of people in harsh sunlight, Jefferson Graham's favorite tip that he talks about from the iPhone photo show is carry a magazine with you, open it up and put it over the person's head to block the sunlight, so that the background could be bright sun, but the person will be in shade, and will create a more pleasing image. Because we all know that if you take a picture of someone in the bright sun, and you have a shadow under their eyes or under their nose or something, it's just not very flattering at all. So, any more thoughts on the bright sun, midday sun?
No, I think we talked a lot about that for the diffuse light. So I think, like I said, it's almost two sides of the same coin.
The next one is reflectors and fill light. And we don't have any images for this because, as Dave and I talked about before we started recording, we don't really have any reflectors, or we don't use flash. So, but Dave has a little trick that he told me about, but I'll just read this first. It says, when shooting in challenging lighting conditions, consider using reflectors or fill light to balance the exposure. Reflectors can bounce light onto your subject and fill in shadows, while fill light can be added using an external light source or by using a white surface to bounce natural light onto the subject. Now, I think before we go any further, I think it's somewhat confusing when we talk about natural light. And then now here we are talking about, external light sources and things like that. I consider natural light to be the light available at the time of the shot. Now, whether you're using an off-camera flash or whatever, or a flashlight, to me that's natural light. It's not like it's light that's available to you at the time. So I usually call it available light.
Yeah, or physical light.
Yeah. So, natural light doesn't always have to be sunlight. So now just talk a little bit about that tip you gave me, Dave, with where you're sitting.
Yeah. So where I'm sitting, the only light in the room is an overhead light behind me. So for video, being lit from behind generally is a bad thing. It darkens your face. It creates long shadows. So I have it's actually not a ring light. It's a magnifying light. So you plug in, you kind of look through the magnifying lens, but it's a ring shaped light. Well, if I put the ring light directly on me, it's way too harsh, way too bright. But if I point it at the wall, which is very light, it's like a white cream colored wall, and then it reflects off the wall back at me, it gives a nice, basically like a fill flash, if you will, where it's giving a little bit of light on my face without, doing the looking like you're a little kid holding a flashlight up to your face telling ghost stories.
Yeah, yeah.
So it gives you a nice fill there. And the other thing, and this is something that the iPhone does, and that Macs, I'm assuming they still do this. If it's too dark, the screen will flash white as a fill flash.
Oh, when you're taking a selfie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because or if you're using at least my computer, if I'm using, because I have a Mac, a photo room, not photo room,
photo booth.
Photo booth. And you want to take a picture and it's too dark, the screen will go white to act like a diffuse, kind of like a reflector.
Yeah.
To give you this white, but not like a point flash. And that's part of the problem with, like, when people say don't use the iPhone flash, because it is so much of a point, you're not getting a nice, even tone on someone. It's like pointing a flashlight at someone's face.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, like I said, you can use walls, you can use pieces of paper. You don't have to buy something that is set up just to be a reflector.
Yeah, yeah, like those shiny silver looking things that photographers pop out of their kits or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when it comes to iPhone photography, if you have another iPhone, or if somebody's with you and you can use theirs, some good fill light is to turn on their flashlight part and leave it on, and move it in and out, adjust the strength of it, and it works great for fill light. Like if it's kind of dark and you want to add a little bit of light to someone's face, even say from the side for that kind of dramatic effect, you can, and then take your shot with night mode. I imagine it would work. I don't take enough pictures of people to have tried this, but I'm just kind of imagining that would work great as fill light. Reflectors, like Dave said, you could use a blank piece of paper, anything that can reflect light. You could put it down below your chin, whatever, there's all kinds of ideas for a makeshift reflector. I don't know, that's about all I can think of. And I think that's very clever what you're doing with your setup. Like, because, when I'm looking at Dave on the screen here, folks, he looks really good. The lighting is really good on him. And then the rest of the room in the background is a little dimmer. So he really stands out on the screen. Mm-hmm. So that's actually quite clever. I couldn't get away with that in this room that I'm in because I have all these foam pads on the wall to absorb the sound. They're not going to bounce the light off very well. Right. They're going to absorb it more than anything. But so I have to play around with my lighting setups. But anyway, but yeah, so that's reflectors and fill light. So this next one is silhouettes. And Dave and I, we got there's 3 pictures here. Dave supplied 2 and I've supplied 1. And your first one, Dave, is an interesting take on silhouettes.
Sure. But before we do that, let me write the little caption here, the snippet.
Okay.
Capture striking silhouettes during sunrise or sunset by exposing for the background rather than subject. This technique also works well when you have a strong and recognizable shape or an outline against a colorful sky.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the first one here, and let me bring it up on my phone. Make sure I have, yeah. So this was actually sunset outside of a strip mall. And it was just dark enough where the clouds were reflecting the sunset. So you can almost consider this golden hour also.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But it was just dark enough. It wasn't a complete black silhouette, but there was a good amount of darkness, and the street lights are just kind of there to give you a point set of lights, which are kind of going down the road, and the car lights are on.
Yeah.
So they give you a little depth too. So it's not strictly a straight silhouette, black against colorful or black against white, but it gets the feeling of, what's in front isn't as important as the sky per se.
Yeah. And I've seen people do silhouettes where you can see, like if it's a person that's silhouetted, you can see a little bit of light around the one side of the type of thing, just to kind of give an outline of what their features may look like. And that's exactly what I think of when I see this, because you could tell, like if you had edited this to the point where everything at the bottom, like in the foreground, was completely black, you'd never know there was cars in the parking lot.
Right.
But that's what I like about this, is the fact that you could tell that there's cars there, but yet a lot of the features are so dark that, basically they're irrelevant, and that helps the sky stand out.
And especially if you have a nondescript foreground, that helps out. If you were doing something like the New York City skyline, or Big Ben in London, where the silhouette is so known, you could do it as a blackout and people would know that. But having it's a strip mall from that was built 60 years ago, and right on the ground, it's kind of nondescript. There's nothing really that sticks out here.
The average person looking at this wouldn't know anything about it. Whereas if you live there, if you're familiar with it, you know what it is. If it was completely silhouetted out, but yeah, like you say, it's being that it's nondescript, it's nice to have just a little bit of detail in there to kind of help you understand what it is. So your next one, it's a true silhouette. There's no doubt about it.
Right. And this was actually taken last night during our power outage. So went outside, this was between lines of thunderstorms. And I did convert this to black and white. So originally this was not even though it's night mode, handheld, it wasn't really black and white. There was still some color in the clouds itself. But I decided to go black and white just to give that extra punch, especially with the trees in the foreground. Because even though they're pretty filled in, you can see the holes in the trees, for lack of a better term, where the branches are. There's not enough
where you can
leaves.
see through them. Yeah,
exactly. So I wanted to emphasize that, and I didn't get rid of the power lines Sometimes touch retouch is a great job, but sometimes if you have that many power lines, it can just mess up the photo. So I decided just to leave it there also.
Yeah. Well, you know what though,
And that adds kind of to it
it
too.
adds to the story of the photo where
Yeah.
you're talking about a power outage, and what better way to explain it than to have dead power lines in the
Yeah.
photo. But that's so boosting the contrast and really making sure that the foreground is blackened right out is a
Mm-hmm.
great way to have silhouettes, to show silhouettes. Um, the image that I provided is uh, kind of in between the two images that you provided. It's dark enough, the foreground is dark enough that you can barely see what it is, other than the fact that you could tell it's a house. And this is an old abandoned house. So there's no lights on. The reflection on the glass on that one window in the front is from the sun. And
Okay.
or maybe not the sun, but at least from the lit up sky that's in the
Mm-hmm.
background. And so you could tell it's a house because you can see part of the roof. You can see a couple of hydro poles, and you can even see the line going from the one up into the top right of the frame. And then
Mm-hmm.
of course the trees there. And I like you, I boosted the contrast a little bit to make sure that there was very little to no detail in that foreground, in that silhouette. So but there's just enough left in the windows of the house there that you could tell that that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's silhouettes is a an interesting concept to play with. You can leave a lot of detail in, or you can take all the detail out of it. And by taking the detail out of it and boosting the contrast here, of course, the sky is more or less the star of the show because of the cloud cover, and you can still see some of the blue sky in behind and whatnot. And just a lot of fun to play with silhouettes.
I do love the like I said, just that hint on the front porch of the reflection,
Yeah,
because that just cuts into the middle of the silhouette.
yeah.
And you can tell it's not the sky behind it since it's a bright yellow.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah,
adds a
that's right.
little additional contrast and look to the photo.
Yeah. And, I just noticed now after, having taken the photo and edited it and everything else, that the tall pole that's in the center of the frame, when it goes down and the house is behind it, you could actually see a little bit of light on the pole. So you could actually see where the pole goes down further in front of the house.
Mm-hmm.
I never noticed that before. So that's kind of an interesting thing about it all too. So next we got window light. And okay, so yeah, both of these are my images. So the window light, if you're shooting indoors, position your subject near a window to utilize natural light. Window light can create a soft and flattering illumination, especially during the golden hour. Experiment with different angles and curtains to control the intensity and direction of light. Now, I tried to find a picture I took in my house with a one of those like a see-through type of linen type of curtain or whatever on the window, and I could not find it in my Photos app. I'll probably find it tomorrow if I go looking for it again. But so what I did was so the first one is of inside this old house, and it was pretty dark in there. It's not like it was an abandoned house or anything. It was there was tours through this old place, and there was this door that had these two tall windows and a window across the top. And it was a dull day, a dull gray day, but the light was coming in. So the diffused light was coming through the window, and it was lighting up the floor and the area around it and that. And this was taken with my 8 Plus. That's how, no, sorry, my 6S. I just looked at the thing here. This was my iPhone 6S. So that's how long ago this was taken. But, just the light coming through the window provided a wonderful soft light effect on the interior of this house. And the door, even though the door is swung wide open, it's lit up, but that's probably because there's other windows in that room somewhere, letting just enough light in to light it up. And, as far as editing, I don't know what I did with this, but I don't imagine it was too much. But, just the light from that window was enough to give it a nice effect of, you'd almost think it's like an abandoned, empty house or whatever, but meanwhile it wasn't. But that's kind of the feeling you get. It's not like there's any interior lights on. There's a light above the door, but it's not lit up. I guess probably because it was in the middle of the day. But to the opposite effect, my next image is simply my back door in the wintertime. I just finished shoveling who knows how much snow off my deck. And I thought it looked really cool with the light, the warm light from the inside of the house, shining out the window and onto the railing and whatnot and into the snow. And, just the light bounces off the snow and then back onto the wall and the door again to kind of light it up a bit. So, window light can do a number of things. It can let natural outdoor light inside, or it can let artificial light from the inside come out and, produce different lighting effects. Any thoughts on window light, Dave? Have you I think I've seen some of your images where, you've taken of your pets and that. And,
and a lot of them are like right. And a lot of those are harsh window lights. Yeah. Especially like the cats where they love, they see sun, they will plop themselves down and just kind of lay in the direct sun.
Right. Yeah.
I was thinking, I kept on trying to get more of a, like you said, more of a lighter light, a more diffuse light, like you had in your first photo. And I couldn't find anything easily on my camera. And when I tried to just take pictures, I couldn't find the right look and balance.
Yeah. Window light's not, it's not something that people think of too often, I don't think. But I challenge the listeners to work on some images with window light and see how much fun it can be. Oh, excuse me. Whether it's from the inside out or from the outside in.
And I didn't even think about doing like an outside in look.
Yeah, and I didn't either. I was, like I say, I was looking for this one from the inside that had this curtain, and I couldn't find it. But as I was looking through, I came across this image, and I thought, well, gee, window light doesn't have to be from taken on the inside, right? It could be taken on the outside, and the light coming out the window. I mean, it's window light, right? So, so that's window light. The last one that we have, the last topic is experiment with shadows. So I'll let you read that one, Dave.
Sure. Use the interplay of light and shadows to create dramatic and artistic effects. Shadows can add depth, texture, and interest to your photos. Look for interesting patterns or play with shadows to tell a unique visual story.
And I think what you've got with this one is really, really cool.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, this was another one taken last night when we didn't have power. But we do have solar lights on either side of our walkway. And because it is summer, they get an awful lot of sunlight. And the lights do go out in that spoke pattern. And
that is cool.
Yeah. So I took a picture of it and I just did a little bit of editing here. I pretty much darkened the background a little bit more so I can give emphasis to the light beams going out in the radial pattern.
Yep.
But other than that, this is one where the camera sometimes will catch something more dramatic than what your eye can see it, because your eye can get used to the shadows, so the lights aren't as contrasty as they are on the photo, where here you can see two lights, both kind of with their radial beams of light going out and just kind of interacting with each other.
Yeah. It almost looks like, there's a lighthouse the way it projects the light, and you took a shot, took multiple frames as it's going around. That's kind of what it reminds me of. But no, I really like the way, like in the description, it says interplay of light and shadows, and that is exactly what this is. It's very well captured. It's those lights are so cool. I haven't seen lights like that. Not even in our stores here. Yeah. But they'd be a lot of fun to play around with photography for sure. And then the other part of the description mentions texture and add depth and things like that. And this picture that I took is just simply the top of our freezer, just inside a window, and the sun was shining through this curtain that had these patterns on it. And the way it landed on the freezer, I thought, that's kind of cool. I'll have to get a picture of that. So that you can see the texture of the freezer, throughout the image, with the the light and the shadow of the light coming through the curtain. And I just thought it was an interesting, just an interesting composition, the way it is. And all I did with this one is, if I remember correctly, just boosted the contrast just a little bit, and that's about it. So, play with light and shadow, and there's a picture from years ago of a walkway in our local park, and it was in late fall, and I have no idea where this image is now, but it was so late fall, so that would mean that it would be dark early, and the sun was going down, and it was shining through these trees, and the shadows were going across this this walkway, this path, and it was just really neat the way it was just like, what's the best way to describe it? Almost like there's little sticks across the path, and they were just the way they were lit. The shadows were projecting across the path. It's hard to explain with it. I could see the picture in my mind, but I can't get it out. But the light and shadow, playing with light and shadows. Even with that harsh midday sun image that we had of the trees in the forest there, that's light and shadow. Experimenting with that. So, have you thought of any other images that maybe you didn't include that you can think of that maybe kind of go along with this?
I do have a couple different images of the same kind of walkway, where you can see more of them, even more lights kind of crisscrossing across the walkway.
Oh yeah.
That's the main one I can think of with light and shadows, because you have to be careful, because the white can overshadow so much, you lose the shadow itself.
Yeah. It can be overpowering. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And another image that sticks out in my mind is I was out walking the dog one time, and it was getting near the end of the day, and the sun was behind me and the dog, and our shadows going down on the road. It made us look like we're 10 times taller than we really are. So time of day could have a lot to do with how the interplay with light and shadows would work. So I can't think of any other ways to experiment with it right now. But I mean, don't be afraid of your shadow, folks, because it could be interesting what you could do with it.
Yeah, most definitely. And these are different categories, but you can definitely overlap. Light and shadows with backlit, with silhouette. You can hop off one, hop off another, and there's no hard and fast. Well, this is obviously a silhouette, and this is the backlit.
Yeah. I mean, light is what photography is all about. So finding ways to utilize natural light, whether it's from the sun or the moon or from street lights or any light source at all.
Yep.
I would call that natural light. But anyway, there's so many different ways you can do it. So to sum up this this topic here, ChatGTP said at the end of it all, it says, remember to pay attention to the direction, quality, and intensity of natural light in different scenarios. Take test shots and adjust your composition, exposure, and positioning accordingly. iPhone cameras have built-in exposure control, which allows you to tap and adjust the exposure manually. Of course, we all know that. To adjust proper or to ensure proper lighting on your subject. With practice and observation, you will learn to make the most of the natural light and capture stunning images with your iPhone. So I think that sums it up pretty good.
Yeah, agreed. Yep.
Yeah. So, that's utilizing natural light. And I think because I am just so whipped, Dave, I think we'll call it a night.
No, that sounds good. I know that definitely sounds good.
Yeah. So,
and like I said,
again,
it's lots of information too that we went over. So
yeah. So again, folks, go to the website, iPhoneography.ca, look for the episode podcast, and you can see these images. If you don't see them on your podcast player of choice, I don't think Spotify does this yet, which is really unfortunate because a lot of listeners use Spotify, but it works in Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, I think, and there's a few other ones that it'll probably work in, but yeah, and these images that Dave and I provide are just mere examples. There's so many different options that you can use. So again, next on the next episode, we're going to talk about understanding exposure. So that should be fun and interesting to, especially trying to get our homework done and come up with images that can portray that. But anyway, so I guess Dave, just tell folks where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on most social media as ProfPod, on Twitch as ProfPodPGH, and in the Facebook group as Dave Podner Jr.
Alrighty. You can find me pretty much everywhere at about.me/McMillan. That's where all my links will be for just about everywhere I am, I guess. And again, the podcast website is iPhoneography.ca. So thanks, Dave. It was another educating discussion, and
always fun to talk photos. Always fun to talk photos.
Oh, sure. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I guess we'll see you all in the next one, everybody.
Have a great one, everyone.